The Rome in our minds is a colossal empire of marble columns, invincible legions, and dominion over the Mediterranean, isn't it? Yet, behind this splendor lie moments of blood, sweat, and near extinction. You can't build Rome in a day. But do you know how a small city-state in the middle of Italy transformed into the superpower of the ancient world? This is the epic story of a struggle for survival. Right in the heart of the Roman Forum, there's a black stone that tourists usually walk over, but which actually hides one of history's greatest secrets, the Lapis Niger. On this stone, a Latin word is legible, rise, that is, rex, meaning king. But in Roman history, the word king is not a compliment, but a curse, a malediction. Romans hated kings so much that even hearing the word angered them. Even Julius Caesar, centuries later, had to beg, "Do not call me king." So, what happened that this society, which worshipped its ancestors, declared their father kings devils overnight? The answer, again, lies in a bedroom, again in a bloody event. Today, we will talk about how Rome paid the price for what it called freedom. Welcome to the expulsion of the kings and the birth of the Republic. In the previous episode, we left Romulus on that muddy hill he watered with his brother's blood. Back then, Rome was a malaria-ridden village where bandits hid. But now, in 509 BC, we are in a completely different place. Exactly 244 years have passed. Rome was ruled by exactly 7 kings during this time. The first kings, like Numa Pompilius, established Rome's religion and calendar. But then, from the north, came the real civilization of Italy at that time, the Etruscans. The last 3 kings were of Etruscan origin. These were engineer kings. They built that massive infrastructure that made Rome Rome, the sewers that drained the swamps, and the colossal temples. Rome's transformation from a village into a real city was thanks to these kings. But of course, civilization had a price, freedom. The Etruscan kings were quite ruthless in achieving their goals. They worked the people like slaves in construction. They humiliated the noble. The last straw that broke the camel's back was the 7th and final Tarquin. He was a complete tyrant who trampled on the law and learned despotism from the Rome was now a powder, and a single spark would be enough to detonate that. That spark came not from a battle, but from the bedroom of a noble. The king's son, Sex, raped Lucretia, a noble Roman. Lucretia refused to live as a Roman woman with a tarnished honor. She called her father and husband, told them what happened, and committed suicide by plunging a knife into her heart in front of everyone. What she did was almost a harakiri, departing from this world by giving a lesson to those left behind, rather than disregarding honor and trampling it underfoot. This event was not just a tragedy. It was like stepping on Rome's bam wire and igniting a fuse. Brutus, who was there at that moment, raised that bloody knife in the air and swore that oath that changed history. "By this blood, I swear that I will never allow Tarquin or anyone else to be king in Rome." And the people revolted. Subsequently, the kings are expelled from the city, and the Romans establish an ingenious system so that no single person would ever have so much power again. Residential publica, that is, the people's business. Thus, the new republic was born. You might say, okay, but maybe the Lucretia story is a dramatic scenario that the Romans made up later. Then let's look at the evidence. That black stone we mentioned at the beginning, the Lapis Niger, is a monument almost exactly from this transitional period. The writings on it describe that the king's powers were limited by religious ceremonies. This stone is the physical, tangible proof of that chaotic period. However, things didn't improve immediately when the kings left. Just like today, there was a terrible chasm between the rich and the poor. The laws were oral and could only be known by priests. The plebs said, "If we don't know the rules, how are we going to play the game?" And upon this, around 450 BC, the 12 Tables, the foundation of Roman law, were written and hung in the Forum. It contained savage articles like slavery for debt, but the important thing was this: the law was no longer between the king's 2 lips, but on that cold bronze tablet that everyone could see. The law had now become concrete. There was law, but there was no equality. Every level of the state was in the hands of the rich or nobles. The poor plebs existed only to die in war. In 494 BC, the coolest event in Roman history occurred. While the enemy was at the gate, the plebs refused to fight. They left the city and withdrew to the Sacred Mount. This was history's first general strike. They said, "We're not fighting, we're not baking bread." The elite class was almost in shock. If there is no labor force, no army, there was no Rome either. Sitting at the bargaining table was no longer a discretion, but a necessity. Thus, the plebs achieved the greatest political gain in history, the tribune of the people. These men had the power to stop any law passed by the Senate with a single word: veto. That is, I forbid. Thanks to the sit-in action of a group of angry Roman peasants on the hill, we still use this word today. Internal peace was achieved, but in 390 BC, a storm from the north destroyed Rome's illusion of invincibility. The Gauls, the Roman army was destroyed, the city was looted, senators were massacred. The Romans agreed to pay gold to the Gauls to leave the city, against the Romans who saw that cheating was done while the gold was being weighed. The Gallic chief Brennus threw his sword onto the scale and said that famous phrase, Vae Victis, that is, woe to the vanquished. This trauma would radically change Rome. Those massive Servian walls that you can still see in Rome today were built with this fear. Rome turned into a militarist state that took security seriously to the point of paranoia, saying never again. And this great lesson they learned would radically change Roman history and war strategies. The Gauls went away, but now Rome had learned its lesson. They had to expand. In the south, they encountered the Samnites, the lords of the mountains. In 321 BC, at the Caudine Forks, the Roman army fell into a trap. The Samnites didn't kill them. They did even worse. They took their weapons and made them pass under the yoke. This was like the death of a soldier's honor. Rome did not collapse. It was just forced to evolve. But they didn't just fight, they also built at the same time. They built strategic roads like the Via Appia, the new highways of that era, with paved bottoms, where armies could easily transfer vehicles and crowded armies quickly on busy routes. Thus, by moving the legions at lightning speed, they loaded the army with rapid movement power. The army could move on the new roads, almost like a locomotive of that time. It wouldn't take long for this agility and speed to bring Italy to its knees. They abandoned that cumbersome Greek battle order they used to use. They switched to the flexible Maniple system that moves like a chessboard, and giant shield Scutum in the hands of the soldiers. The Samnites had humiliated the Romans, and the Romans had learned from them how to fight professionally and conquered Italy. Rome had now descended to the southern tip of Italy, but there were Greek colonies, and their protector, the war genius King Pyrrhus. This unstoppable rise of Rome in the south attracted the attention of the Hellenistic world. Dreaming of becoming a new Alexander, King Pyrrhus of Epirus landed on the shores of Italy, and with him he brought monsters that the Romans hadn't even seen in their nightmares. That is, the heavy war machines of that time, war elephants. In armored baskets like saddlebags specially made on these elephants, soldiers were stationed and archers could easily hunt down enemy soldiers located at a lower level, almost like firing a machine gun. In 280 BC, the Romans encountered a monster, war elephants, for the first time in their lives. Pyrrhus defeated Rome in every battle, but in every battle he lost so many men that finally he said, "God, if we win one more victory, we will be destroyed." This is where the phrase Pyrrhic victory comes from. The Roman superpower was not their skills, but their inexhaustible human resources and stubbornness. As Pyrrhus fled Italy, he looked back and said a prophetic word. "What a colossal battlefield I am leaving for Rome and Carthage." He was right. Rome had defeated all the bosses in Italy. The Scipio tombs on the Via Appia were now filled with the names of conquerors, not merchants. But the real bully of the neighborhood was sitting across the sea, the master of trade and the navy, Carthage. The world was not big enough for two superpowers. The bloodiest reckoning history has ever seen was about to begin. In the next episode, the seas will be stained with blood, and a nightmare named Hannibal will knock on Rome's gates. Do you think Rome's strategy was right? What would you do if you were a Roman king of that era? I'm waiting for your comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm waiting. See you in the next episode.